G'day team, and for the first time in a couple of weeks, thanks for checking into the Breathless blog. Like always, you can probably hear me having a little pant, but also my assistant, my creative director Dudley is, yeah mate, you've got no excuse to be panting, seriously. I suppose 6 hours of sleeping must be hard. But tell you what, I had every intention of number one, going for a run last week, and number two, punching out a blog, but it just didn't happen. No excuses, but it's been a hectic couple of weeks. Not that I'm looking for any bravery awards, but last week was five 4:30 starts in a row. All self-inflicted. Most of the time Tilly slept in a little bit, but I just need to get up and try and pump a bit of work out, which for the most part I got done. But how could I have anticipated this week? In that, once again, for Queenslanders and Brisbaneites, welcome to lockdown. I certainly share and have better understanding every time this happens to our brothers and sisters south of the border. Sydney, Melbourne, Victoria, New South Wales. Hang in there, guys. I know you've done a lot tougher for longer than we have. But yeah, lockdown. So on the weekend, I actually had every intention, the best of intentions, to go to Toowoomba. Nudgy was playing Toowoomba Grammar School in rugby, and I was pumped to go back to my old school. See a lot of old faces, interact and just get a feel for the place again. You know, it's nearly been 20 years since I left, but it's still one of my favourite places to go back. So, get to Toowoomba. On this particular day, by the way, for the first time really ever, Kim and Tilly were coming along for the ride. Kim was going to go and spend the day with her friends out west of Toowoomba that she grew up with. She doesn't get to see them that often. That's what adulting does sometimes. And so she dropped me off. I'd photograph the day. On the way back through, she'd pick me up. We'd go home. All a beautiful plan. But as many of you will know, that wasn't to be. About 10:30 on Saturday morning, all games were cancelled immediately thanks to the latest lockdown we had. So I didn't want to spoil the party for Kim and her visitation for the weekend, especially before we get locked down for a week or, I don't know, month, or whatever it's going to be. So I actually just said, well, I've got the ability to work. I have my iPad and laptop, and obviously I just photographed it an hour and a bit. So I set about doing some work, but I sat in a very familiar place. I sat within the school grounds, and while I tried to start to work, I was just, overtaken by this growing sense of nostalgia and sentimentality throughout the afternoon. So I had effectively idle time from, say, like 10:30 till about 3:30, something like that. And I know for a lot of people, if you think about actually spending time back at your old high school, it probably makes a few people break into a cold sweat and have some heart palpitations and couldn't think of anything worse. But for me, that's certainly not so. I love my time at Toowoomba Grammar School, and while I actually tried to start a blog there, but I got interrupted by the friendliest dog in the world, and then not long after, Kim picked me up. So I had intentions to do a non-breathless blog, but it didn't happen, as you would see. But like I said, I love my time at Toowoomba Grammar. I had years 10, 11, 12 there, and I'm always really conscious and genuinely aware that for me to go there was certainly a great privilege, and I was very lucky to have the opportunity to go there. But it certainly is not about being like better or worse or right or wrong in terms of whether I had have stayed at Tenterfield High School, but my life just would have been very differently. It would have played out completely differently. And that's not to say that it's an elitist look at it. Absolutely not. In fact, I still consider Tenterfield to be my first home. In a way, Toowoomba is kind of home, and certainly here at the front of my house is home these days. But, if I hadn't have gone to Toowoomba at that time, in a time of relative uncertainty, I guess you could call it, I wouldn't have had the connections to cricket as a player, but then as a coach and administration that set up 10 years in the first decade of my working career. And I wouldn't have worked at Queensland Cricket, and I wouldn't have worked at Nudgy College through cricket. And then I probably wouldn't have had the relationship with Nudgy to continue my photography there and ultimately set up a livelihood and life that involved me engaging in a passion every day. So, yeah, had I stayed in Tenterfield, I may have been a photographer, I don't know. But it probably just would have been very different, like I said. But as I sat there, like in that, letting this nostalgia and memories flood back into me, I couldn't help but sort of reflect on the time as like the first time I was there, because, like 20 years later, so much is the same, but so much has changed there, architecturally and staff-wise and whatnot. So even to go back now is kind of like same, but very different. But it's like going back for the first time again. But I've also got this bank of memories that just, sit there. And in a weird kind of way, like I'm sitting there and I'm, in the same gazebo that was there 20 years ago, and I'm looking out over the same fields and in front of the old school building, and I'm watching a couple of kids on the main oval there take goal kicking practice. And that was one of like the favourite things that some mates and I used to do, especially in footy season and when the posts are up. Like we would spend hours engaged in, match-winning, high-pressure situations for all sorts of things, from, trying to make this conversion. And if you make this kick from the sidelines, then, this particular girl will ask you out, or, just the things that boys or kids do to make competition out of anything. So everything about it, just even like the clean air compared to probably Brisbane, the sounds, I don't know, even smells this time of year, it was just a little bit surreal. That I got to spend the time that I did. And it was probably perfect, to be honest, because it just gave me, after a really full-on couple of weeks and knowing that I've got a really full-on couple of weeks to come, it was like an enforced little stop. Just to stop, be super mindful and aware of what was around me and reflective. And given that the last few weeks and months, a year, has been me involved in the Reflections Project, which is at a super reflective, nostalgic, sentimental kind of level with a lot of people. So to sit and question and absorb everything that they've got to say, to try and fashion that then into a photograph, but then go away and put my writer's cap on and try and produce some text and a copy that's meaningful, that matches their story and the photo, right? So it's just probably where my creativity is sitting at the moment. So it's kind of a perfect timing for me to actually revel in a little bit of my own story. And I digressed a little bit, but I just wanted to have a reflect on that period of my life as, that the thoughts and emotion and the sort of, things to contemplate as a 14-year-old boy, and the decisions made as a 14-year-old boy that ultimately now as a 34-year-old man, I look back on and kind of look at almost in a almost like it's someone different. Like I know it's me, but it's different. Like when I left Tenterfield in the 12 months leading into me going to Toowoomba, I was basically confronted with a bit of a crossroads of my life, because at that stage in my life, I wanted to play cricket for Australia. And I was making some New South Wales representative teams and rep squads at that time, but being so far away from Newcastle, Sydney, Wollongong and SW, my chances of actually progressing my cricket were quite limited. And at that time, also my brother and sister were like, I suppose they must have been 3 and 1 or something like that. So my mum and stepdad had their hands full trying to raise a really young family, and sort of me in that awkward mid-teen years. So for me to have any ability to progress that part of my life and fulfill those dreams, I had to move away. And as I mentioned earlier, I was so fortunate that I had the support, emotionally and financially from my mum and stepdad, where like the reality was I actually didn't have that much capital or in the bank to send me to do that. But they risked and sacrificed a lot to allow me to do that. So while I had a big chunk of my close and immediate family offering me support at that time, I also had other parts of my family who weren't so supportive. And, while I now respect in a way why they weren't necessarily overjoyed that I was going to move away, I also understand how difficult that made it for me to ultimately make a decision that was going to give me better opportunities to pursue something I loved. So, like I said, as a 14-year-old boy, to make those decisions to get out of my comfort zone, to find a bit of courage and face a lot of unknown at a time when, I didn't know whether I was good enough to progress anything with my cricket. I didn't know how I was going to go living away from home, and I It was only once I'd sort of moved away that I probably understood the stresses that it actually put on my family. So, but what I am is really, I'm proud of myself. Like I said, looking at it almost as someone else. I'm proud of myself and the decisions that I made to actually make that leap, the leap of faith to go and try something new, explore something a bit different, and give myself an opportunity to see if I was going to be good enough. And in a weird kind of way, as I sit here and listen to what's pretty quiet at the moment because we're in lockdown, I think there's a lot of people probably facing similar situations where there's uncertainty and change and a lot of external noise around that influence our capacity to remain optimistic or happy or fulfilled in our different parts of life. But unknowingly back then as a 14-year-old kid, even having the courage to, reach out and grab something and not let go of it and try and make a go of it, has probably subconsciously at the time shaped a lot of the rest of my life. It's certainly probably proved to me that, the outcomes of that were that, okay, I didn't play Test cricket for Australia and I'm never going to. But it proved to me that even if something, even if something appeared to be unrealistic or unattainable, to still just reach out and have a crack at it. And I think through the career progressions that I've had and the jobs I've had, that lesson, even while I probably don't think about it that way so much until now, speaking to the world about it, it's probably shaped a lot of the decisions that I've made. And that leads me to the last, say, 18 months, 2 years, well, even a bit further back than that to jump into photography. But the first couple of years of that jump was spent, pedaling and paddling as fast as I could and saying yes to every opportunity that I could. But last year's lockdown, what it gave was time again to pause, stop, reevaluate what I actually wanted to do with my photography or my life. At that point in time in my life, we just had a newborn baby in the house. Kim was on maternity leave. She was obviously receiving some financial income from that, but largely it was sort of down to me to try and provide a lot of income. But then you get COVID come along as a sole trading photographer, which kind of kicks you in the ass, doesn't make it easy. So there's those pressures around you, whether they're financial or sort of self-sabotaging in a way that, am I going to be able to make this work? But like I said, it just causes, or it allows time to stop and breathe, which has just been amazing. And I sort of get that feeling again, a bit over 12 months on now in this lockdown scenario where there's so much fear and unknown and uncertainty around my life as a businessman at the moment. But I'm actually feeling really energized in that, number one, I'm getting a lot of work done from home because I've got a truckload of writing and editing and stuff to catch up on. But number two, it's also just starting to put me back into that same frame again where I was to even pitch the Reflections project or to try and think about what comes next. What is it that I actually love and want to do? And, there's a couple of things that are just simmering at the moment. And all the time I catch myself thinking, geez, that's probably a bit unrealistic, or I don't know whether I can achieve that or attain that. But, you know what? If anything's taught me, like the stuff I've been speaking about today, and anything from the last couple of years in life into photography, is that even if it is going to be unrealistic or, add a little bit of anxiety, but a bit of self-doubt, or ask me to question whether I'm good enough, that generally means that I'm probably on the right track. Because I think that those times in my life to date, they're the times that it's meant that I'm actually pushing myself to get outside my comfort zone and try and go and achieve something that I love and want to do. Whether it works out or I reach where I need to go, isn't so much important in my mind, because even just by pressing myself and pushing myself and asking the questions of myself, I know that from that, there's always other little branches that, spring out and take me in a different direction. So look, that's kind of where it's been at the last couple of weeks. I've been, head down, bum up. I've been writing. I've been trying to shoot a lot of stuff. The last couple of days since I've been in lockdown, I've been madly, immersing myself back into some recordings and note takings and writing a lot of stories, and I've loved that. It's just been tremendous. And I suppose to anyone out there, if you're feeling the stresses and burden of a lockdown situation and the uncertainty that it brings you, I'm certainly not sitting here telling you how to feel or how you should react to those stresses, because I don't know your story or your situation. But I suppose all I'm doing is sharing a couple of instances in my life where the support I was getting back was probably mixed. I had massive self-doubts in myself and to whether I was good enough. Imposter syndrome, financial pressures to be able to pursue something that I love. But I wouldn't change anything for what I've done. And in fact, in a lot of cases that I've made the decisions to chase something that were the types of things that we're speaking about, the people around me have certainly commented that it's nice to have me back. So that's it for this week. I hope you're going well. I hope you're staying safe wherever you are in the world, in Australia, in Brisbane, or whatever it is. Hang in there and look, take some time. Go for a run, listen to some music, try something different, start another hobby, brainstorm some opportunities that you would love to pursue that might challenge you, whether it's learning a new language, starting yoga, pursuing another photography project, getting the camera out of the cupboard. Just go and do it, because I tell you what, you won't regret doing that as much as you regret not actually having a crack. That's how